In this video, we'll learn how to create reusable components in Svelte and how to use component props to customize those components. So what we'll be doing is we'll be taking the styling for these Pokemon cards down here and using it for our two selected Pokemon. And for these two selected Pokemon, the styling is going to be different than the ones down here and slightly different functionality. And so that's where the component props come in. First, decide which Pokemon we're using, and second, to put some options on there to change how we display it. So let's create our component, and we're going to make it super simple to start off with. We'll call it monster.svelte, and then we'll say hi from monster component. And then we'll go into our plus page.svelte and use it up at the very top. So we'll do that, and it'll automatically import monster, and there we go. It says hi from monster component, and we could repeat this and it'll say it 3 times. Next, let's add a component prop. So we can put in a script tag, and we'll go ahead and make it TypeScript, and we'll go ahead and use a super simple prop. It'll be monster name, and it'll be a string. And then we'll go ahead and use the monster name in our template. And so now this is showing an error because we are using this component, but we're not giving it a monster name. So let's go ahead and give it a monster name. And here we can just say Charizard. And here we could give it something that's not hard-coded. So we can say monster.name. And then we'll go ahead and, so you can see that it says Charizard for both of them because that is what we've selected. Let's make it. All right, here we go. Charizard and Ivysaur. You can see a TypeScript error, and that's because monster 2 can be undefined. So we could do that, and that passes the error down to here saying, oh, well, monster name now could be undefined. So right now, this isn't actually a problem. It's still displaying, and that's because we do have a monster 2. And if we remove the monster 2, it'll still display just with something that we didn't expect. And so it's good that TypeScript is giving this to us. And if we were getting the monster 2 instead of just the name of monster 2, and we were trying to call .name on it there, then we would really have a problem. And so there are multiple ways we could fix this. The one we'll choose for now is just to give it an empty string, or a string that just says monster, like before. Of course, the monster name alone isn't enough to recreate these cards. We're going to want the ID and the image URL. So we could ask for the monster ID and the monster image, or we could just ask for the monster object, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to make our prop the monster object, and we're going to give it the shape of the index monster that we created in generations.ts. Sorry, in page.ts. And so this is what we have coming from our API, so we will have this available. So here, we'll call .name directly on the image monster, and it's throwing a 500 because we're not feeding in the correct stuff right now. And so here, instead of putting in the monster name, we will just put in the monster. And we'll go ahead and remove the second one. And good, we have it displaying. Although if we remove the monster ID, this will throw an error. So as a quick fix to prevent that, we will do an if block. So we'll say if monster, then we will display the monster card. Otherwise, we won't display anything. These undefines are coming from here. So let's go ahead and repeat this if block for monster 2. And remove these placeholders. Cool, so now we have nothing there. Click this. We have Ivysaur for the first one. We have Charizard for the second one. And we are good to go with creating the full card. So let's go ahead and get this copied in here. So we'll leave the each loop, but then we'll take all of this and put it in our monster component. So first you'll see that, yes, we did in fact have all of this working. So it's displaying. We'll deal with these errors in a second, but it's not displaying like the card says it should. And the reason for that is because the CSS that we have here is not applied to anything within the component. So if we copy all of this and put it in here in a style tag, now it works. And the reason for this is because we have scoped CSS. So you can write CSS in here and it will only apply in this component. It won't apply to anything in here. And if you write CSS here, it won't apply to anything in this component or any other component unless you use a special global function. So we've got these displaying. Let's go ahead and put in our monster and fill these in, and they're displaying just like before. But when we click, it doesn't do anything. And that's because we do not have the update search params working. But wait, you say, didn't we write update search params in here? The thing is, we no longer have access to it in the monster component. So there are a couple ways we could handle this. We could pass in the function. So there we go. We've got update search params and we have the function signature that we pass in. And then we would put update search params here and we'd put this in all our uses of this. And then this would work. There are some other ways of handling this. So one is emitting events. And so if we did that, we'd have an on, and then we'd give the event name, such as updated monster. And then we'd give it a handler, like update search params. And then in the component, we'd use a event dispatcher. And so you can see from the code here, what you do is you import create event dispatcher, you run create event dispatcher to create a dispatch constant, and then you run dispatch with the arguments when you click the button or run the event within the component. And some people love this. It doesn't seem natural to me, but it's possible I'm missing something. The other option is to just, instead of having it here in the page component, you could co-locate it in the component here. And yeah, that's really all you need to do. You need to add some missing imports, but there you go. This should work just as well. And so the advantage of this, and I'll go ahead and demonstrate that it is working. Good. So the advantage of this is that your parent component doesn't need to worry about what's happening. Disadvantage is that this function is now not very reusable, so it's really only good for this component. A fourth option is because update search params is pretty generic, it could go into a utilities file. Because notice there's nothing in here that takes into account the rest of the state of the component. So it's purely functional, perfect fit for utilities file. Except for one thing, which is that it's hard-coded to be at the base route. And so for now, let's go ahead and just bring it back to here. For mainly, honestly, the reason is so that when we have the difference showing in the git commit, you can see an example of passing a function. That is honestly the biggest reason we're doing it this way, because otherwise it's kind of a wash for several of the possible methods. Now we're ready for the final phase of this lesson, which is to add a prop so it looks different here and here. So let's go ahead and export an isInteractive prop, and it'll be a Boolean, and let's put it default as false. And which ones do we want to be interactive? We do not want these two to be interactive, but we do want this one to be interactive. So is interactive equals true. And what will that change? So the first thing is that we don't want addMonster2. So if is interactive, then we'll display addMonster2. Otherwise, we will not. Cool, so it's just showing this as selected here. And the second is when we click it in general, we do not want it to add it as the monster1. So we're going to make this on click a little bit different. And so we could do it inline. So we do is interactive and do a ternary here, and then just do an empty function right there. And so now let's change this and see we're clicking here and nothing is happening. So here we have it. The interaction is basically what we want. And we have learned a lot about reusable components. There are some styling and UI changes that we could do to make this look better, but that is beyond the scope of this video. In the next lesson, we're going to add a search bar so you can further filter out your Pokemon. And after that, we're going to make these clickable so that you can load not just the Kanto Pokemon, but the Pokemon from all the regions. Be sure to hit like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next lesson.